the configurator can be used in SAP to create sales quotes and sales orders with configurable options. And I'm going to run through SAP, obviously showing you how we launch it, etc., etc. But the configurator also can be used directly from a production order. We support sales, assembly, and production BOMs. We can also create intelligent item numbers, which I'm going to run through a model later on. So the connector ensures all the relevant items are synchronized from SAP to the configurator. Pricing is real time and is always based on the business partner master record. So whichever price list is assigned, it will display real time. Our configurator has a number of display modes which can show graphics and item lists dynamically, and it can be used as a guided selling process using adaptive questions and answers. The product or the item logic is embedded in the configurator. We supply with the configurator a model builder stroke logic builder program that's used by the product expert of the customer. They can build and maintain all the logic and rules that are needed for their products. It's intuitive, it's quick to learn, programmer skills are not required, and genuinely training is in a number of hours or days. It's not a long period, it's not weeks or months, it's hours or days. And this is where they can create the questions and answers, the exceptions, calculations, and any relationships, whether it be for the graphics or the item numbers. And they can add and manage all the attributes of the items for the configurator. So that's the end of my quick introduction. I hope it's given you a high-level overview. I'm just going to pause to see if there are any other questions that need answering before we go into SAP and start configuring. Okay, so we'll start as a sales quote, and as you see with this instance, the only thing that probably was different to the instance that you're familiar with is we have two buttons at the bottom to configure. So we'll select a customer, which obviously has the sales price list assigned to it, and you'll notice also on here we can add a column that allows you to add smart part numbers. So clicking the configure button will open a browser with a list of products that can be configured, and the menu that is displaying here is controlled by the product expert who uses the model builder. It allows them to make any of the models active or inactive. I'm going to start off just by showing you a very simple demonstration model to give you the concept of how it works. You can see in here by default this is loaded with an answer of 1LS, and I've chosen to select or display a number of images, whether it be a thumbnail image, an image on the right hand side, which can be number of images, it's not limited to one, and of course the item list with their quantities and price and the price total. The product expert in the model builder has many choices and allows them to display any of the quadrants on screen at the moment. You can elect to use images from the start, add them later. They can display any of the quantity, the description, the price, etc., etc. And in this instance, you'll see that the 1LS has 4 simple questions that need to be answered. Just to show you that it's dynamic, if I select the 1LT, you will see not only do the items update, but it presents me with 2 additional questions that will need answering. Based on my selection, I can assign an image or a number of images, as I mentioned. And again, just to show you that the items and the price is continually updated. In this example of 1LT, you can see that there's a few choices of colors. In particular, I'm going to choose the Synergy Green, and you can see there in this example there are more than one images. So again, you're not limited to the images. It will scroll in the quadrant, and again, if you wanted the item list quadrant switching off, it can display more images, obviously, because of the real estate's bigger. The system works where obviously we can assign an image based on a single answer or a number of answers, called what we call a relationship. And if one image was put in, it would flow through the system until another one was put in its way, and obviously we will display that. And you'll see on the bottom right the relevant items and their quantity and pricing is updated based on my selection. If I choose to elect to, in this instance, show a sunroof, you can see that we've assigned an image to it. If I choose no, it will revert back to the previous image. And finally, on my last question, once I've made my selection, it will tell me that my configuration is complete, allowing me to save and exit. Because it's a rule-based configurator, if we change direction at any time, for instance, as I started on the 1LS and I go now back to the 1LS, we present on screen just a dialogue telling the user, that's fine, but just be prepared to answer some questions again. And those questions that need answering again are presented with a question mark. You can see that the save and exit is grayed out, and once we go to the answer or the question that needs selecting, you can see in this instance there is no synergy green available. We can make any of the other selections and it will allow me to save and exit. Regardless of what we are displaying, every time we are capturing all information. We are capturing behind the scenes, we are capturing the item list, the bill of material, the correct quantity and its description, its items. We are also capturing the questions and answers also. We even capture the last image that's used also behind the scenes. So again, just to summarize, if the product experts wants to display or hide any of these, it's we capture everything behind the scenes. When we save and exit, we use the Get Configuration button to check in SAP to see if that identical bill of material has been used before. And if it has, it will pull it back and it will use the same number that is holding those components that make up that bill of material. If there is if there's one change, then it would generate a new number going forward. And again, it will always check to see if the numbers have been used going forward. Okay. I'm simply now going to add this as a sales quote. I'm then going to take the sales quote and I'm going to copy that quote to a sales order, which is again standard functionality. Just assign a delivery due date, and now it will allow me to add that as a sales order, and ultimately I can release that through the procurement or to production, and it's finished. We've finished our job. Okay, so that's the first part that I wanted to show you. The second part is I'm going to now create a new sales quotation with a smart part number. So again, same sequence. You can have multiple line items with multiple configured items. It's not limited to one. This is just an example where obviously now I'm going to choose something that, in this case, a valve, and I've chosen to assign all the defaults, so when it loads I can just quickly run through, apologize. But you can see here, based on my selection now, on the bottom right, you can see that a number, or in this case a letter, is displaying based on my selection. So in every question, whether it's not limited, you can have a segment that assigns to the answer, and based on the answer it'll start to build that string. As you see also behind the top, we can assign the items, the components that's behind this intelligent item number or a smart part number. And running through to the end, it'll allow me to complete it, telling me it's complete, and you can see that it's going to capture all the items and it's going to capture this smart part number. If I save and exit, it will pull it back, and you'll see now we have two. We have the smart part number as well as the bill of material number, and again we can do it either way. Same thing again, I can add this as a sales quote, and obviously I can copy this to a sales order, which I can ultimately copy to a sales invoice. Okay, so that's the configurator side. Any questions there at all whilst we're in this area? Okay, so then people obviously ask, how do we create that logic? And that's obviously used with SAP. So as I mentioned earlier, we provide the back end of the configurator, which is our model builder. And the model builder basically allows you to create and maintain all the logic that's needed in any number of the models. And you can see in this instance, I have some that are active and some that are inactive. The system is very intuitive. So what I'm not going to do is I'm just going to show you briefly how expand the questions and answers and show you a very simple demonstration, or just a simple path. But you can see here in the model builder, we can create new, we can edit. Clearly we can make them active or inactive. We can also find and replace items in any number of models that are created simply by highlighting and find and replace. Each model has a revision, so effectively if I wanted to copy it from a previous revision, I can do so. So that's quite handy when clients have lots of models and similar logic, and they can just copy it and go and tweak it. Okay, so in this instance I will copy this model to show you how the layout looks. And you can see now there on the left hand side, if I expand all the questions and answers, you can see that it's very simple. In this instance there's 6 questions with their answers. I'll make it inactive so none of the salespeople can see it, and this will allow me to change, amend, test until I'm happy to make it active. The system, the model builder, allows the user to create questions with different types assigned to it. It can be a single answer, it can be many answers, it can be a numeric that allows you to ask for user input. It also can be changed to create calculations, carry calculations through from previous answers, and again, anything with pure math can be assigned to it. The text is straightforward. You can have, if you want to force someone to give some information based on an answer, you can do so. An item filter is a question type that filters on the attributes of the item. And a model chain is effectively, you can actually guide users into different models that are active. The answers, obviously, as you see here, just by clicking on a single button allows you to create an unlimited amount of answers. And this is where we assign the items, and as I said earlier, items can be assigned on a single answer or a number of answers. So we can assign graphics, whether as a thumbnail, or even on the right hand side of the quadrant we can assign multiple images also. If I just go very simple, add one here, you can see there that I can also make it a default answer. The way we condition the logic is we have different ways of doing it, but effectively we can use the ability of control click, just by controlling click, whether it be one question or many answers. You can just control click and create either a negative or a positive exception, and we can either do that as I showed you, control click, or we can manage that by creating and assigning the logic in that in a Excel spreadsheet and importing that. We can also do similar, we can do a relationship, which is when we choose, let's say for instance we choose test, a manual and a grey, we can create a relationship that assigns the items to these 3 answers in the relationship. We can also assign the images based on this relationship. Similar to the exceptions, we can build the relationships again in Excel spreadsheet and import that into the model builder. Again, allowing you to create the relationships and maintain them easily. If I was to just go and click now change the type to a numeric, you can see it opens up the calculation tab, and this is where it allows me to ask for user input. So anything from, you can put minimums to defaults to maximums, you can label it, and you can also build calculations off the user input or off any of the values that are added to the answers above it. We can build, so in this case we could bring a value of the transmission, we could then add a constant, divide it, or obviously assign the operator. We can even go to a table that's been updated or uploaded, in a spreadsheet, and again assign the values, label the calculation, and then once we go to the item we can assign the value of the calculation to the item. So as you see there, I can change the quantity from assigning that label above it. Okay, so again, that's just showing you very briefly how we create the questions, the answers, assigning the or creating the exceptions, and as I said, they can be done in both a negative and a positive sense. So there are no programming skills required. It's very intuitive. We anticipate that from a training point of view, it's a number of hours. We recommend 8 hours as a starter. We do have many customers who have taken less than 4 hours. We have only a handful who have taken probably more than a couple of, or 2 or 3 days. So again, I think that speaks for itself, that it's very intuitive and easily you can be up and running very soon. So that's my very brief. I didn't want to labor on this other than to show you the highlights of how the system is put together and how it's obviously tightly integrated to SAP. I'm just going to take a pause and see if there's any questions at all in the chat window. Okay, there's one in the chat window asking earlier, do we use, is it HANA? The solution is still SQL. We are on a SQL database. We do have a connector from SQL to HANA, and that's available obviously on the network.